Hi everyone, in this video I'd like to talk about extending leads or flexi leads, and this is something that could be quite a controversial subject, with many people having a strong opinion either in favour of them or against them. So I'd like to present some of the pros and cons to help you make your own decision about whether it's the right choice for you and your dog. Now, in terms of general benefits, I think most people can see that having an extending lead allows the dog to have more freedom on the walk. So they can sniff more, they can go off and sniff in the undergrowth or have a more meandering route. You can carry on walking down the path and they can do their own thing. So it can give them a more interesting walk whilst you don't have to keep stopping every time they want to sniff or go and walk on the wet grass because they want to go and see something away from the path itself. So it's good in that respect, and it can build their confidence because it gets them to have a bit more time further away from you, making them less reliant on you during the walk. However, the list of negatives I feel is a little bit longer than the benefits. So most importantly, you cannot usually put the handle round your wrist, and that means that it can be pulled out of your grasp. If it's wet, it's even easier. If they snatch suddenly and you drop it, then your dog is running with that bouncing along the ground behind them, which can be quite frightening. Of course, it has a locking mechanism, but that can fail, and it encourages your dog to pull because they need to put pressure on the lead in order to make it extend. So if you have a dog that pulls, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to pull less. The lead is encouraging them to pull, and they may just pull the whole lot out and then walk 10 meters or whatever in front of you, still pulling as they go. Now, if something happens, you may not easily be able to get them back in because the lead will extend as the dog pulls, but then how do you get them to come back? And you do see people doing this weird yanking motion to try and get a bit of slack on the lead so they can reel the dog in when they want them to be closer. And it doesn't help you build a connection with the dog while you're walking. So instead of the dog paying some attention to you in addition to the sights and smells of the walk, they're off there doing their own thing. And that isn't always for the best. So thinking about some of the risks to your dog with using an extending lead. In the case of greyhounds, they're sprinters. They can do 0 to 40 in a few strides. So they can go from walking next to you to being at the end of that extending lead and snatching it out of your hand very quickly. That could occur because they see something they want to chase. It could occur because they've been frightened, perhaps by a noise, or they could just be exciting. Meggie here, she likes to zoom round when she's toileted. So just because she's had her poop can mean that she could charge off to the end of an extending lead, and when she gets there, that can be a problem. If they arrive at the end of the lead very quickly, you can have a whiplash effect, and it compresses the delicate structures in their neck, so this can be quite dangerous for your dog. You might find also that they run into trouble out ahead of you. They might run onto the road, they might lunge at another dog. So a lot depends on whether you can predict their triggers, whether they will listen to you if they see one of their triggers, and what they will be doing when you're busy doing something else, most particularly whilst you're picking up poo, for example, or maybe you were on your phone and the dog sees something, does something unexpectedly, and suddenly they've zoomed off. So there can be risks to your dog in terms of control, and also if they arrive sharply at the end of the lead because they've dashed off doing zoomies. Now, there can also be risks to you and to other people. Other people may not see that lead, especially if it's one of the cord types, and they may cycle into it, run into it, trip over it because your dog is out at a distance. And while you're trying to hold on to the lead, if you need to try and pull the dog in, you could get rope burns, like friction burns, on your hands as you try to pull the lead in because you're not able to stop the dog from moving further away in an emergency situation and you try to grab at the cord. It may be not so easy to get your dog away from a problem, and your dog themselves could be entangled in their own lead, and that, with the thin skin of a greyhound, could lead to nasty friction burns, or even worse, maybe even requiring a trip to the vet for stitches. And the risk is much worse if your lead is the type that has a cord. You can also get them with a tape, which is going to be safer if you do decide you'd like to use an extending lead. And I think it pays to remember Highway Code Rule 56, which says that if a dog is walking on a pavement, they should be on a short lead. So even if you have an extending lead and you're walking on a pavement, you should have that lead locked short, rather than allowing the dog to extend to wherever they want to be, not least because of the risk of the dog running across the road, as happened to me once when a lady's dog ran right across the centre line, barking at me and my dogs on the other side of the road, and narrowly avoided getting run over. So what are our key learning points about using extending leads or flexi leads? I think most important, if you're going to do it, buy one with a tape, not with a cord, and be aware that there is a risk with any equipment. So do check that it's not frayed, that the locking mechanism is working, and so on before you use it. You need to know your own dog and how they will respond in different situations. Out of all my dogs, I think it's only Daisy here that could be trusted on an extending lead. All of the others have issues that mean it would not be safe, even in a wide open space. I think it's important that your dog has an effective recall. We don't want to use it instead of training, but we could use it to allow a trained dog to have more freedom. If you're going to use this sort of lead, it should be connected to a harness, because if the worst does happen, at least the pressure put on the dog when they are stopped suddenly at the end of the lead is transmitted round the torso and round the chest, rather than all being on their neck. You're going to have to be aware of risks as you walk, even more so I think if your dog is on an extending lead, and it's important to keep them in sight at all times. So please don't be one of those owners that lets the dog disappear off round the corner on an extending lead, because who knows what is round there. You may not be able to get round in time to help them with any problems they encounter. And abide by the highway code. Keep the lead locked and short when walking on the pavement. So that's all for today. I hope that has provoked some consideration of whether an extending lead is safe for you. I'm afraid my preference is not to use one at all. I would typically, if I want to give the dog some more space, I would use a double-ended lead that extended to its full length, or buy a training lead that has a proper clip on one end and a handle on the other, and then you can adjust the length to suit, but there isn't the same risk with your dog suddenly sprinting off and hurting themselves or getting into trouble. Do have a think about it, and be careful if you decide that an extending lead is going to be your way forwards. I certainly couldn't really recommend one for use on a greyhound. That's all for today. We'll be back again soon. Bye for now. Look out for new videos every Monday, and why not subscribe so you don't miss out.